Level 1. Basic Ninja Weapons. We have to start somewhere, right? And in the ninja world, everyone begins with the absolute fundamentals. I'm talking about kunai, shuriken, senbon, paper bombs, and ninja wire. These are the weapons that have existed since the very beginning of shinobi history. And honestly, they're still everywhere, even in Boruto's era. You see them in the hands of fresh academy graduates who just got their headbands yesterday, and you also see them strapped to the belts of legendary kage, who could probably wipe out armies without lifting a finger. That should tell you something about how essential these tools really are. What makes basic weapons special is their availability and versatility. A kunai can stab, slash, or block incoming attacks when you're in a tight spot. Sure, on its own, it won't take down something like a tailed beast, but when you channel chakra through it, that same kunai suddenly cuts deeper and becomes way more dangerous than it has any right to be. The weapon itself is simple, but the ninja using it can turn it into something completely different. These tools are made from regular steel. Any blacksmith can make them, and any ninja can buy them from pretty much any weapons shop in any village. That's exactly why they're so common. And the mechanics behind basic weapons are extremely straightforward. Sharpness, weight, and momentum. That's it. You don't need to understand some ancient technique passed down through generations. You just need to know how to aim and throw. This simplicity makes them perfect training tools for beginners. A kid learning to be a ninja can actually understand how these weapons work, practice with them safely, and build real combat instincts without risking their life every single time. So yeah, basic ninja weapons represent simplicity in its purest form. But every single ninja carries them for a reason. They work. They're always there when you need them. And honestly, they've probably saved more lives than any legendary blade ever has, just by being reliable when it matters most. Without mastering these basics, nothing else in this ranking even matters.
Now, if you've made it this far, welcome to the amazing world of anime. This is the place for true fans like you, where we celebrate all the magic, action, and emotions anime brings to our lives. You've watched, you've felt the hype, you've been lost in these beautiful fantasy worlds, but, have you hit that subscribe button yet? Right now, almost 90% of you are watching without subscribing. Just imagine, if everyone hit sub, we could build one of the strongest anime communities out there. So, go ahead, click that subscribe button right now, so you won't miss any new episodes, deep dive breakdowns, or awesome anime content coming your way. Thank you so much.
Level 2. Doping. Now here's where things get interesting, because we're moving into weapons that don't actually look like weapons at all. I'm talking about pills and liquids that can turn an average ninja into an absolute monster for a short period of time. The most famous example has to be the Akimichi clan's 3 colored pills. The first pill is green, and it boosts your chakra significantly, making all your techniques hit way harder. Already pretty good, right? But then there's the yellow pill, which cranks up your speed and reflexes to levels that shouldn't be physically possible. Choji went from being the slowest member of his team to somebody who could actually keep up in serious fights. And then there's the red pill, the one that unlocks butterfly mode. This thing burns through your entire chakra reserve and your life force at the same time, giving you power that can legitimately compete with a Junin-level ninja. The trade-off? You're probably going to die. Before Tsunade created the antidote, taking that red pill was basically writing your own death sentence. You'd win the fight, sure, but you wouldn't be around to celebrate. These pills are clan secrets, which means only a handful of people in the entire world even know how to make them. But there are more common versions out there too. The military rations pill shows up all the time, especially during long missions where ninja need to keep fighting without rest. It pushes your body past its normal limits, letting you ignore exhaustion and keep going when you should have collapsed hours ago. The problem? When it wears off, you crash hard. We're talking complete physical shutdown. The way these drugs work is pretty straightforward, but also kind of horrifying. They force your body to produce way more chakra than it naturally can, which sounds great until you realize that chakra comes from your life energy. You're literally burning yourself from the inside out to get that power boost. It's self-destruction as a combat strategy, and the scary part is that sometimes it actually works. And we haven't even talked about Orochimaru's mind-awakening pill yet. This thing is on a completely different level of messed up. It's designed to speed up the evolution of the cursed seal, pushing it straight to level 2. In theory, that gives you massive power immediately. In practice, it also dramatically increases the rate of seal infection, which will kill you in minutes if you're not careful. The only way to survive is to be sealed inside the 4 Black Fogs formation, which puts your body in a state of fake death so you can adapt to the power without actually dying, and even then, there's no guarantee you'll make it. The Sound Four all had to go through this process, and we saw firsthand how brutal it was. But doping isn't all death pills and suicidal power-ups. There are safer versions designed for support rather than raw strength. The blood-increasing pill, for example, helps your body produce more blood rapidly, which means you can keep fighting even after taking serious damage. It's not going to make you 10 times stronger, but it might be the difference between bleeding out and surviving long enough to finish the mission. Level 3. Signature Weapons. This is where weapons stop being just tools and start becoming identity. They define you as a ninja, and honestly, they might be more important to your fighting style than your actual jutsu. Let's talk about Asuma's chakra blades for a second. They're specifically designed to channel wind release chakra with almost no energy loss. Asuma could extend the cutting range of his blades, making his close combat style way more deadly than it should be. And Minato's flying thunder god kunai. Of course, he can place the seal manually on any surface, but with the kunai, he can send them to the target and teleport there. In his fight against 1,000 stone ninja, do you really think he won because he was just faster than everyone? Number. He won because he turned the entire battlefield into his personal teleportation network using those kunai. What separates signature weapons from the levels below them is chakra compatibility and specialization. Basic weapons work for anyone, but signature weapons only reach their full potential in the hands of the person they were made for. Try giving Haiden's scythe to someone else. Sure, they can swing it around, but can they use it to draw blood mid-combat while avoiding getting hit themselves? Probably not. The weapon and the user have to evolve together, and that takes years of training. This is also where we start seeing weapons that can actually enable techniques that would be impossible otherwise. Tamari's giant fan doesn't just create wind, it amplifies her wind release jutsu to the point where she can level entire forests with a single swing. The weapon isn't just supporting her abilities, it's multiplying them. Level 4. Mechanical Weapons. Here's where we need to talk about what happens when you combine ninja techniques with pure engineering genius, because mechanical weapons represent something completely different from everything we've seen so far. We're stepping into the territory where a single ninja can control an entire army without ever stepping into direct combat themselves. And yeah, I'm talking about puppets, specifically the ones from Sunagakure that have terrified enemies for generations. What makes mechanical weapons jump to a whole new level is that they create an entire combat ecosystem around the user. Yeah, signature weapons enhance your fighting style. They make you better at what you already do. Mechanical weapons completely redefine what's possible in combat. A puppet master isn't just one fighter, they're commanding multiple units simultaneously, each one capable of independent offense and defense. Sasori controlled 100 puppets at once and took on entire nations by himself. The brilliance of puppet design is in how they function as complete battle systems. Kankuro's Karasu doesn't just attack, it can launch a storm of kunai, release poison gas, detach its limbs for surprise attacks, and even disguise itself as a human body. That's 4 or 5 different tactical options built into a single weapon. And Kankuro is controlling 3 puppets like this at the same time while also defending himself. The level of multitasking required is insane, which is exactly why so few ninja can actually use these weapons effectively. But here's what really separates mechanical weapons from signature weapons: distance and safety. When Tamari swings her fan, she has to be there on the battlefield, exposed to counterattacks. When Kankuro fights, he can position himself far away in cover while his puppets do all the dangerous work. If a puppet gets destroyed, he's annoyed, but he's not injured. The complexity of these weapons is also worth understanding. Building a battle puppet requires knowledge of mechanics, poison chemistry, physics, and advanced chakra control just to make the thing move properly. Lady Chiyo's white secret technique with her 10 Chikamatsu puppets is considered one of the ultimate puppet techniques, and she spent decades mastering it. These aren't weapons you can buy or even commission easily. They require a complete support system and years of development. That's why they're mostly limited to Sunagakure, where puppet mastery is literally part of the village culture. And the power ceiling on mechanical weapons is legitimately terrifying. Sasori turned himself into a puppet and became effectively immortal, with over 300 weapons built into his own body. He could control puppets from inside other puppets, creating layers of deception that made him almost impossible to fight strategically. When you're facing him, you're dealing with poison, blades, chakra wires, detachable limbs, hidden compartments, and psychological warfare all at once. That's not a fight. That's trying to solve a deadly puzzle while someone is actively trying to kill you. Even Payne's Astropath demonstrates how mechanical augmentation can create overwhelming firepower. Built-in missiles, laser beams, multiple arms, detachable heads that explode. This is taking the human body and turning it into a walking weapons platform. The versatility is unmatched by anything in the lower levels. But mechanical weapons have a critical weakness that you need to understand. They're completely dependent on the user's concentration and chakra control. If the puppet master gets injured, distracted, or runs out of chakra, the entire system collapses instantly. All those puppets become useless wooden dolls. Level 5, Legacy Weapons. Now we're entering territory where weapons stop being about practicality and start carrying actual weight of history. Legacy weapons aren't powerful just because they're well-made or because they have special abilities. They're powerful because they represent generations of legendary ninja who wielded them before, and that legacy becomes part of their strength. When someone picks up one of the 7 ninja swords of the mist, they're not just grabbing a cool weapon. They're inheriting a title, a reputation, and a responsibility that comes with centuries of bloodshed. Here's what makes legacy weapons fundamentally different from everything below them. A signature weapon is personal to you. A mechanical weapon is built by you. But a legacy weapon existed long before you were born, and will exist long after you're gone. You don't own these weapons, you're just the current wielder. And that difference matters more than most people realize, because the weapon isn't adapting to you. You have to prove yourself worthy of it. Take the 7 swords as the perfect example. Each blade has its own legendary history and its own unique ability that can't be replicated. Samehada absorbs chakra and can actually reject wielders it doesn't like. Kubikiribocho regenerates itself by absorbing iron from blood. Hiramekare can transform chakra into different weapon forms. These aren't abilities you can add to a normal sword. They're built into the weapon's very nature through techniques that have been lost to time. When Zabuza wielded the Executioner's blade, he became one of the 7 swordsmen, which immediately put him in a different class of threat. The sword itself gave him status and fear factor before he even drew it. And let's be real here. How much of the 7 swordsmen's power actually comes from their own skill versus the swords themselves? Amiyuri Ringo, with Kiba, could move at very high speed and overwhelm opponents with dual blades that conducted electricity. That's impressive, sure, but put her against someone like Sasuke in a pure skill fight without those swords, and the outcome becomes a lot more questionable. The swords don't just enhance the user, they elevate Fine Jonin into legendary status, which is something none of the previous weapon levels can claim. Then you have the Uchiha Gunbai, and this weapon operates on a completely different philosophy. You don't just get to use this because you want to. You have to be worthy. You have to be strong enough to lead the Uchiha clan, or at least represent what the clan stands for. That's why when Madara returned during the war, Obito immediately gave the fan back to him without hesitation. It was never really Obito's weapon, he was just holding it temporarily. The Gunbai reflects attacks using wind release and can nullify almost any offensive technique thrown at it. Notice I said almost because Genjutsu still works. What separates legacy weapons from mechanical weapons is pretty straightforward. Mechanical weapons give you versatility and multiple attack options. Legacy weapons give you raw power and battlefield presence that's hard to quantify. When Kisame walked onto a battlefield with Samehada, enemies had to completely change their strategy because chakra-based attacks became risky. That's map control through reputation alone. Puppets are scary because of what they can do. Legacy weapons are scary because of what they represent. But here's the thing about legacy weapons that people always overlook. They create targets. If you're carrying one of the 7 swords, every ambitious ninja in the world knows that killing you means they get to claim that weapon and that title. You're not just fighting for yourself anymore, you're defending a legacy, and that pressure breaks a lot of people. Suigetsu spent years trying to collect all 7 swords, and he's just one of countless ninja who have obsessed over claiming these weapons. The blade makes you powerful, but it also paints a target on your back that never goes away. Level 6, Susanoo's weapons. Alright, we need to talk about what happens when weapons stop being physical objects entirely and become pure manifestations of chakra and willpower. Susanoo's weapons exist in a category so far beyond everything else we've discussed that it's honestly hard to even compare them to normal weapons. Every weapon up until now, no matter how legendary or powerful, still exists as a physical thing you can touch, break, or steal. Susanoo's weapons are different. They're made entirely from chakra, shaped directly by the user's intent and spirit. You can't forge them in a workshop, you can't inherit them from previous generations, and you definitely can't buy them in any shop. They exist because the user wills them into existence, and they disappear the moment that will falters. The sheer destructive scale of these weapons makes everything in the previous levels look like toys. Sasuke's Susanoo sword can cleave through multiple mountains in a single swing. His Indra's arrow, which is basically Susanoo's ultimate weapon form, can pierce through perfect defense after perfect defense like they're made of paper. We're talking about attacks that can reshape landscapes and destroy entire armies. When Madara swung his Susanoo blade, he wasn't trying to kill one person or even a squad. He was erasing sections of the battlefield from existence. That's the difference in power we're dealing with here. What makes Susanoo weapons fundamentally superior to legacy weapons is pretty simple. Legacy weapons have fixed abilities that were built into them centuries ago. Susanoo weapons, on the other hand, are limited only by the user's chakra reserves and will. Sasuke can create a bow that fires arrows of pure chakra destruction. Madara can manifest multiple blades simultaneously. They're reality-bending tools that adapt to whatever the situation requires. The rarity of Susanoo weapons is also on a completely different level. To even unlock Susanoo, you need the Manjikyu Sharingan, which already puts you in an incredibly exclusive club of maybe a dozen people in the entire history of the shinobi world. But beyond that, you need massive chakra reserves. Sasuke and Madara can maintain Susanoo for extended battles. Itachi Uchiha would burn through their chakra in minutes trying to maintain even a partial Susanoo. He was ill, he didn't have the stamina to maintain Susanoo for too long. The comparison to everything below is honestly kind of unfair. Basic weapons require basic skill. Doping requires willingness to sacrifice. Signature weapons require training and specialization. Mechanical weapons require intelligence and chakra control. Legacy weapons require worthiness and reputation. But Susanoo weapons require you to be born into the right bloodline, survive the trauma needed to awaken Manjekyu, and possess chakra reserves that put you in the top fraction of 1% of all ninja who have ever lived. It's the most exclusive weapon class in the entire ranking, and the power gap reflects that exclusivity completely. Where Susanoo weapons truly break the game is in their combination of offense and defense. Every previous weapon type has a weakness. You can be disarmed, poisoned, exhausted, or outmaneuvered. Susanoo weapons exist inside a giant chakra construct that's already defending you while you attack. You're essentially wielding weapons of mass destruction from inside an impenetrable fortress. The only real counter is to have more chakra than the Susanoo user, which against someone like Madara or Sasuke is basically an impossible condition for 99% of opponents. Level 7, Divine Instruments. We've reached the absolute peak, and this is where weapons stop following any normal rules whatsoever. Divine Instruments aren't just powerful weapons or legendary tools, they're artifacts that existed before the modern shinobi system was even created. Most ninja don't even know these things exist. They're buried in legends, hidden in forbidden vaults, or sealed away specifically because they're too dangerous for anyone to use. When you hear stories about the Sage of Six Paths or ancient battles that shaped the world, these are the weapons that show up in those stories. They're not meant for regular combat. They're meant to decide the fate of nations or seal away god-level threats. They have their own inherent power that exists independently of the user. The weapon itself is the source of the ability, which means even if you're not particularly strong, wielding one of these tools can make you a threat to anyone. But here's the terrifying part. That power comes with a price that's usually so severe that using the weapon might be worse than losing the fight. Let's start with the 5 treasured tools of the Sage of Six Paths, because these things are legitimately insane. The Boshosen can generate all 5 elemental releases just by swinging it, which sounds incredible until you realize it drains chakra so fast that Tenten passed out after using it once. The Benihisago and Kohaku no Johei work together to seal anyone who speaks their most spoken word, which is a bizarre condition, but it actually worked on Kinkaku and Ginkaku, who were both immensely powerful ninja. The Kokenjo and Shichiseiken can literally cut and seal a person's soul based on their word. Then you have the Sword of Nunoboko, which is on a completely different level of absurdity. This was the weapon the Sage of Six Paths used to create the world. Not destroy it, create it. When Obito wielded a version of this sword as the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, he could potentially erase people from existence entirely. The amber purifying pot is another perfect example of how broken these weapons are. It can seal tailed beasts, and not just weak ones. We're talking about sealing actual biju that have been terrorizing the world for centuries. The Kohaku no Johei sealed the Nine Tails chakra inside Kinkaku, and that's the strongest tailed beast we're talking about. But the cost of using divine instruments is where things get really dark. The Shinigami mask allows you to summon the Shinigami itself, the actual god of death. You can seal away any enemy regardless of how powerful they are. Hiruzen used it to seal Orochimaru's arms. Minato used it to seal the Nine Tails. It's an absolute guarantee that your enemy loses. The cost? Your soul gets eaten by the Shinigami and you die. Every single time. You use a divine instrument and you might win the battle, but there's a very real chance you won't survive the victory. Extra level, high-tech weapons. Now we need to talk about something that completely breaks every rule we've established in this entire ranking, and that's the weapons that showed up in Boruto's era. High-tech weapons represent a fundamental shift in how the ninja world operates, and depending on how you look at it, that shift is either revolutionary or absolutely terrifying. Because here's what these weapons do. They let people who have zero ninja training use jutsu. The shinobi gauntlet is the perfect example of why this technology is so controversial. It stores pre-made jutsu in scroll cartridges that anyone can activate with basically zero skill required. A 10-year-old kid wearing one of these can fire off a Rasengan that's legitimately powerful. That same technique took Naruto weeks of intense training to learn, and this kid just pressed a button. The gauntlet removes every barrier that used to separate trained shinobi from regular people, and that's either democratizing power or destroying what it means to be a ninja, depending on who you ask. But here's the problem that nobody wants to admit. This power is fake in the most fundamental way possible. When someone uses a signature weapon, or even a basic kunai effectively, they've developed real skill that stays with them. When someone uses a shinobi gauntlet, they're borrowing power from technology. The moment that device breaks or runs out of stored chakra, they're weaker than an academy student. They never learned chakra control, they never developed battle instincts, and they never built the foundation that makes a real ninja dangerous. They're completely dependent on technology that can fail, be hacked, or simply run out of power at the worst possible moment. The other issue is what this does to the concept of growth and training. Every other weapon in this ranking requires something from the user: skill, sacrifice, worthiness, bloodline, something that forces you to grow as a person and a fighter. High-tech weapons skip all of that. Now, to be fair, when you're facing god-level threats like the Otsutsuki clan, you kind of need every advantage you can get. High-tech weapons mean that regular soldiers and support personnel can actually contribute to fights that used to be exclusively for elite jonin and kage-level ninja. It's not just shinobi defending the world anymore. It's all of humanity working together with whatever tools are available. From that perspective, refusing to use this technology because of tradition seems pretty stubborn when the alternative is extinction. So where do high-tech weapons rank compared to everything else? Honestly, they don't fit cleanly into the ranking because they operate on completely different logic. They're more accessible than basic weapons, more reliable than doping, less personal than signature weapons, easier to use than mechanical weapons, available to anyone unlike legacy weapons, don't require bloodlines like Susanoo, and don't demand sacrifices like divine instruments. They're the great equalizer that removes both the barriers and the meaning from traditional ninja combat. Whether that's progress or tragedy probably depends on whether you value accessibility over authenticity. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.